Alright, welcome back. Well, relatively speaking. This is the second part of this Player's Guide collection, which is going to go on forever, apparently, because I keep talking. So let's get on with it, shall we? Alright, so this is the Bradygames guide, or miscellaneous guide section. I have kind of a weird obsessive thing, so Nintendo guides are first, right? And then over here you scroll over and go, oh, look at these all-white guides. Well, they all happen to be Squaresoft titles. And the reason why is because, Bradygames wanted to make their guides for Final Fantasy really fancy. So they all end up looking like that. I don't know why they decided to get rid of that convention, but, what are you going to do? Anyway, first guide. Brave Fencer Musashi. A weird game. I'm not sure if I like it. It's Zelda-esque, but it's not quite Zelda-ish. Well, it came with a Final Fantasy VIII demo, so that's really what most people were going for. Oh yes, the Bushido Blade guide. Now this one is not really a game you'd think you'd need a guide for, but that game had some really bizarre movement, and it had a story mode, which is really exhaustive and interesting for a fighting game. And the move lists were not in the game, so you kind of had to figure out how to use each weapon on your own. So that was a lot of the reason why this guide was actually really good. The Bushido Blade 2 guide, by comparison, is... I always liked Bradygames better than Prima. It always felt like they put more work into their guides. Ah, there's a Final Fantasy VII. Everybody has this one, if they've ever played Final Fantasy VII when it was current. Or they had the Versus guide, which I would have liked to have, but is now hilariously overpriced. Oh, here's a page of the Final Fantasy VI guide, which is in disrepair. Look at this, look at this! Anyway. Oh, and here's the second version. I think I got this at a birthday party. I was like, buy me player's guides, and people were like, okay, and, you end up getting repeats. What can you do? The Final Fantasy VIII guide, its first couple pages are appearing to fall out, but that is okay with me. The Final Fantasy Anthology, which was Final Fantasy V and VI, now on PS1, and now with horrible load times for SNES games. Are you serious? Well, for the time, it was pretty cool, because nobody got to play 5, but the translation on 5 was just bad. Saga Frontier, which is really a guide you need for this game, because this game is so non-linear and weird that a guide is almost necessary to play it. Yeah, I guess that goes for all Saga games. Like, Unlimited Saga definitely needs a guide. Xenogears, which doesn't really need a guide, and seems like the binding got a little bizarre, but... it's an interesting game. I reviewed it pretty lowly, but I appreciate its ambition. And I don't think any other game would decide to be a philosophical treatise masking itself as a video game. So, in this section we have old Prima guides, which used to be good, instead of just horrible cash-ins. So we had the Breath of Fire 2 guide, which is really good. If you've ever played Breath of Fire, they're actually pretty decent Dragon Quest clones. But I always appreciated that they were kind of intricate and a bit dark for their time. I mean, the intro still gives you nightmares. There's an article on the site about that, I think. Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I bought this guide after I'd beaten the game about 5 times, so it's just there for completion. And, there's the Prima version, which is really bad and has no, screenshots. This is when they had these unauthorized secret guides, which meant basically no screenshots, nothing that could possibly break copyright law, and it's just a list of information about a game, which is kind of unexciting for a child. I got the guide sheet, though, so no worries. Oh, Game Fan. They used to make great player's guides, mostly for fighting games and such. And this one is for Darkstalkers Jetta's Damnation, which is Darkstalkers 3, which is also what people would call Vampire Savior. Now, actually, a lot of the information here, even years later, is pretty accurate. But obviously, the game's been out since 1997, so 16 years later, when Darkstalkers Resurrection comes out, people are still finding out new tech and still playing the game competitively. So obviously, a lot of it is going to be outdated in some respects, but too bad it doesn't include frame data. That would be the best. What is this thing? Oh, it's the unauthorized guide to Diddy Kong Racing, which means it's not as good as the official one. Oh, the official Mace the Dark Age. Oh, man. That was a very bad fighting game. Midway was basically like, hey, if Mortal Kombat can do it, we can do it with anything. So they decided, let's put Mortal Kombat in medieval times with weapon combat in 3D. And it's not a great game, but it's a game I like and remember, and I even bought a copy of it later for dirt cheap. So, I don't know. It's one of those weird nostalgia things. The guide is pretty good, though. Yeah, the official Mortal Kombat 3 guide. Yeah, MK3. I like MK3, even if it's a bit strange. The Mortal Kombat Trilogy guide, which is basically 3 with extra characters. The Ogre Battle Guide, which is a game that really needs one. I bought the special edition a while back, and then I traded it in for something, and now I kind of regret that decision, because now it's $50+ as far as I know. The Secret of Evermore Guide. Now, this is a game that was really confusing, and I'm glad I have multiple guides for this. Actually, one of them is in that style of Prima Game guides, where they would say, hey, let's stylize this into a novel, or he'll say, the protagonist did this in XXXYYY, whatever. And it would make the guide really hard to read, but at least it was an interesting thing to read for a kid. Whereas a lot of the Bradygames guys were just, here is the exhaustive information. So, there's kind of a balance. Yeah, this is the one that's more like a storybook and less like a guide. I like this one. And that game really needed a guide, because I remember my brother getting stuck in a dungeon somewhere and not being able to get out. There's some kind of predetermined sequence in the medieval area, which is the 3rd one. Yeah, it's strange. Here's the Secret Mana Guide, which has been split in 2 from overuse. Great guide, though. And it does that story thing that Prima Guides used to do. The Sonic 1 in 2 Sega Official Guide. Sega did not make many official guides, but this is one of them. And it smells kind of bad. They get this water damage. Look at that thing. Look at that binding. It's really bad. Here's another game fan guide, which is Super Mario 64. It's not as good as the official guide, because all it has is screenshots and not really very good maps. Yeah, well, they were strange and hip. The totally unauthorized Super Mario RPG, which has actual screenshots this time. I like this guide, I don't know. It actually had better strategies than the official guide in some cases. Here is the Bradygames version of the Zelda guide, which is more exhaustive than the official guide for some reason. I use this one interchangeably with the Prima guide. It can get you through the water temple somehow. Metal Gear Solid. Now, Millennium Press. They made a couple guides. They came around the PS1 era and then disappeared shortly after, but this one is just really exhaustive in terms of story, in terms of actually getting you through the game, all that sort of thing. Very cool. I wish more guides were made like that one. Ape Escape. I'm not sure who made this guide, but I don't think Ape Escape really needs a guide unless you must find all the monkeys. Yeah, I don't even own Ape Escape anymore. Wow, that's really sad. I don't even know Metal Gear anymore. That's even worse. Anyway, Crash Bandicoot 2. You know what? These games really didn't need guides, but you know what? Guides are cool. I like guides. Tomb Raider 2 and Tomb Raider 3. I think those are all by Other Dimension. Yeah, they're all by Dimension. Dimension was just, it's a lot of screenshots in sequence, and I guess it's kind of interesting for a guy, but not really. Alright, that's the miscellaneous section. Now we'll get into the Prima Games of a different era. I'm not sure which, but the binding keeps changing, so I'll just keep going with it. Alright, thanks for watching.